Planned Parenthood will take the baby and take the body parts of the baby and sell them to researchers.
And I believe Jesus is with all of the women that go into Planned Parenthood. Yeah, I think he would walk a woman into a Planned Parenthood.
The far left is much more reasonable on this issue than the position you've staked. So you think we should criminalize elective late-term abortions?
On these questions, I think that's a very strong...
So you're a subversive?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Keep that there. Of course.
Okay, gotcha. And you agree with all of the tenets of Satanism?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Okay.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we're going to be watching Michael Knowles debating LGBTQ pastor Brandon Robertson on the topic of abortion. Brandon has been on the channel before. You guys may have seen that debate with Andrew Wilson, and that debate is going to be very relevant in this video. So, without further ado, without giving away any more, let's get into the first part.
That on your side, things do seem more black and white. You all take these very hard positions, which I actually do think, and I mean this with a lot of respect, is an exercise in hubris, because it's humans declaring certainty on things that we cannot have certainty on. Whereas on my side, I'm willing to say, I think abortion is a very tricky ethical issue. And I don't think we should be drawing firm black and white lines on this.
If a little orphan shows up to your door and is very hungry and asks for food, do you think that the person whose door he shows up to should feed that little orphan?
Generally, yeah.
Every time, or are there exceptions? Assuming he has enough food.
In the hypothetical, there are so many things that could be happening there, but yes, we'll say yes.
Yes, every time. So you're drawing a clear black and white distinction in all of your hubris, in all of your pride and sanctimony. You're telling me,
hear what I said.
You're telling me that I need to feed that little hungry orphan every time he shows up to my door. Where do you get off with this moral sanctimony?
That's not what I said. I said there are certain issues that clearly are above the pay grade of human beings. And this is one of them. There is no scientific consensus of when life begins, because it's not a scientific question. It is a moral, philosophical, spiritual question.
Brandon, hold on. There is no scientific consensus of when we should be able to have abortions. There is a scientific consensus on when life begins. The whole point of an abortion is to end a life. You can't, if there were no life that were growing, that had the markers of life, the 7 markers of life that are agreed upon by scientists, that was biologically human, that was an independent human, not just like a fingernail or a hair follicle from the mother, that isn't a parasite. That fact is established. It's the reason we have abortion in the first place. They might say, well, this kind of this abortion is bioethically defensible, but you can't say it's not life.
I can say I think it's a potential life. I would make that distinction. I think many people make that distinction, that you've heard this argument. It's not perfect, but a seed is not a tree, and if you stop the seed from germinating and growing, that's not the same as killing a tree. A potential life is not the same as a life, and a potential life does.
Like an egg. I would grant you an egg or a sperm. They're not a human being, but when they come together, they grow. Not like a seed that you have on your everything bagel. They come together as a distinct creature, which is fully human and genetically totally different from the egg or the sperm in itself, and totally different from the mother.
All right, so oftentimes within this debate, when it comes to leftists or even pastors for that matter, they will make the argument that we don't really know what a life is. We don't know when life begins, but this is just factually incorrect. And if you guys have ever seen me debating abortion, you'll see that I often hold their feet to the fire with the fact that life does in fact begin at conception. And especially when you're debating against people who are all about scientific truth, this is particularly relevant. And I want to focus in on what Michael Knowles said here about the 7 pillars of life. Well, what are the 7 pillars of life? Well, the 7 pillars of life propose that any living system must exhibit the following characteristics. 1, program, so genetic instruction like DNA or RNA. 2, improvisation, the ability to adapt to environment over generations or evolutionary change. 3, compartmentalization, a boundary to separate it from the environment like a cell membrane. 4, energy, a way to acquire and use energy. 5, ability to repair damage and maintain itself. 6, adaptability, so response to environment in real time, not evolutionary. And 7, seclusion, keeping internal processes distinct to avoid harmful interference. So with that in mind, does a zygote or a fertilized egg meet this criteria? Let's break it down. Number 1, program. This is arguably the most fundamental pillar, and the zygote has it from the start. The zygote has all the genetic instructions needed to direct its development into a full human body. 2. Improvisation. The zygote is part of a population capable of adaptation and evolutionary change. 3. Compartmentalization. Even at its earliest stage, the fertilized egg is physically distinct and biologically organized. 4. Energy. The zygote consumes, converts, and stores energy to grow and divide. 5. Regeneration. It actively maintains and renews its own structure through cell division and DNA repair. 6. Adaptability. It's biologically active and responsive and not passive. And 7. Seclusion. The zygote has biochemical boundaries that prevent chaos inside. So, at the moment of conception, you have a genetically unique human organism. It's actively carrying out metabolism and responding to cues. It's dividing, repairing, and developing according to a biological plan. So, if the 7 pillars of life define when life begins, then life begins at conception. And one more piece of really important evidence here to show the scientific consensus on the matter. There's a study titled Biologists' Consensus on When Life Begins by Stephen Jacobs, a PhD candidate at the University of Chicago. The findings revealed that 95% of these biologists affirmed that human life begins at the moment of fertilization. And this was not a biased study. All of these different biologists had very different political and ideological leanings. So when somebody says to you life doesn't begin at conception, which is what pretty much they all respond whenever I've brought this up, because this sort of information just gets suppressed, just know that they are very uneducated about the matter, or they're intentionally gaslighting you. So with that, let's move on to the next bit. Before we get there, guys, don't forget to quickly smash that like button if you enjoy the content. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, feel free to do so. Let's get back into it.
So you believe when a sperm enters into an egg, that is a human being?
Yeah. Most people believe that.
I don't think so. And I think if anybody actually...
That's why, for instance, when Planned Parenthood performs an abortion, kills a baby, Planned Parenthood was caught on camera admitting this. Planned Parenthood will take the baby and take the body parts of the baby and sell them to researchers who are doing work and performing research and experiments to develop drugs and other procedures for human beings. If the baby weren't a human being, if the baby's life had not been ended, they wouldn't be able to do that. Planned Parenthood wouldn't be able to make that sale.
First of all, I don't know that situation enough, but that does sound horrifying. And I will say that I do think we can say that up until the point, at some point in the period of gestation, that this person becomes a person. That at the beginning of a pregnancy, when a sperm and an egg come together, that is not the same thing as a fully functioning human being with all the faculties of a human being.
Okay, so we agree on this. We're kind of talking in circles. It's true, the baby at 6 months old or 5 years old or whatever, it's not exactly the same thing as you, a grown person, but it would seem to me it's still a human being. And I don't see much argument against that.
Okay, so Brandon doesn't know about Planned Parenthood harvesting the organs of little children and selling them. Maybe he should look into this, because this is something that is very true, and this is something that they do, and they have, like Michael Knowles said, they've been caught on tape doing this, and they've been caught on tape admitting to this. Check out this unbelievable expose from an undercover journalist that went into a Planned Parenthood convention.
6 months or a year ago, you told me about this proposition, and so now every time I join meeting, I'm like, oh, there's some law.
Yeah, you already know.
I'm like, yeah, I have like a leg for you. I'm like, oh shit. If other people were to hear me, they'd be like, you're evil. You have to come and play with our tissue and see if it's cool enough for you.
I like tissues.
We have a lot of it.
Okay.
See?
Okay, so more for me to do. Like, keep me busy, because if I'm not busy, I get in trouble.
So I have 2 providers who go up to 24 weeks, and Ann is one of the providers. And I'm so sorry. Met the other provider that goes up to 24 weeks, which is Anitra Beasley.
Okay.
And Ann is the other provider that goes up to 24 weeks as well. So if you want more intact ones, she's the one you kind of need to talk to.
You're the one to see, huh?
I had a patient, like sometime in the past few months, I don't remember what it was, she wanted footprints, and I had a resident with me that day, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this procedure because I'm going to try and do my best to get these feet out intact.
Right.
We did footprints and handprints, baby.
Dude, you guys are awesome. Well done.
Yeah. Our best.
So easily one of the sickest, darkest things that you'll probably ever see. These people just laughing about it and just being so open and so flagrant about the fact that they are selling organs and selling baby parts of aborted fetuses. I mean,
I'm going to do this procedure because I'm going to try
This is the sort of stuff we're up against, guys. Anyways, on to the next part now about what would Jesus do?
A more audacious claim that is made, not by you, but by one of your fellow progressives, is that our Lord not only would sanction abortion, but that he would work at Planned Parenthood. Just take a listen to this clip that was going around.
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort, distracting women from the hatred of the protesters, or an abortion doula, holding women's hands and offering support and love as they end their pregnancies. And I expect he would have a stern word for self-righteous legislators who use abortion as a political issue rather than showing compassion for the people seeking abortions.
Okay, I don't know what denomination that priestess finds herself a cleric in, but do you agree with that statement? Not only would our Lord tolerate abortion, he would volunteer at Planned Parenthood to help them be performed.
It might be unsurprising to you, even though I'm a very rational progressive, that I actually do agree with her.
Wow.
Because
I didn't know. I actually didn't know if you would agree with her or not.
Yeah. The reason is, I would say two things. One, 96%, I believe, of the services that Planned Parenthood provides are not abortion. It's cancer screenings, it's STI tests,
mammograms.
Things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. They haven't performed a lot of those. They don't perform mammograms, though they used to say that they did. But come on, does Planned Parenthood exist to hand out a condom to someone, and each time they hand out a condom, it counts as a service? Or does Planned Parenthood exist to perform abortions?
I have gone to Planned Parenthood many times in my own life for testings and general health treatments, and I've never had an abortion. So
what
my
do you
own
think,
anecdotal...
If I came forward then and I said, okay, 97% of what Planned Parenthood does is give tests to Pastor Brandon. And so, and that's, no one really finds that controversial. So, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to eliminate the 3%. It's barely anything Planned Parenthood does anyway. These abortions that don't even really matter to Planned Parenthood, let's just eliminate that. Some other organization can do that. Planned Parenthood is just going to do tests for Brandon and all the other wonderful services they supposedly provide. Good. We agree. We have political consensus, right? Would they go for that? Would you go for that?
I wouldn't go for that because, again, I don't think abortion is a sin. I don't think abortion
But you don't even think it's a minor part of what Planned Parenthood does, is really my point here. You realize that's the heart of what Planned Parenthood does. Otherwise, you could spin it off.
I don't think the numbers actually bear that out. But I do think that abortion is what Planned Parenthood is known for, primarily because of the right targeting Planned Parenthood as this leading organization representing abortion. But to the point, I think Jesus is going to be with people in the height of struggles, in the height of the hardest decisions that we make. I think Jesus is with people in the height of those struggles. And I believe Jesus is with all of the women. Would he
facilitate abortion? He's with us. He's always with us. Would he facilitate abortion, which is her claim?
Yeah, I think he would walk a woman into a Planned Parenthood and sit with her as they're making a decision to go forward with an abortion. I don't think Jesus is a doctor, so I don't think he's going to
well, he certainly is a doctor. Doctor means teacher. He is the teacher because he's the divine logic of the universe. But our Lord speaks a lot about the little ones. Yep. Let the little ones come to me. Whoever scandalizes one of these little ones, it would be better for him to be thrown with a millstone into the water. You don't think he would take a little bit of issue with abortion, with murdering a baby? You know?
So Jesus would be at abortion clinics and he'd be sitting with the women and he would be guiding them as they went about taking the life of their children. Very interesting take indeed.
You sound insane. Do you realize that? You should be medicated.
Now, this is the part where it's very, very important to recap on the debate that we did on this channel with Andrew and Brandon. Let's quickly recap on that.
I was going through, you have a multitude of videos, and I kind of went over the positions, and I just want to make sure that this is correct. Essentially, you believe that people should strive to act with compassion, empathy towards everybody and kind of all creatures which exist, right?
Yes.
Okay. That there is a struggle, an ongoing struggle for justice, and that that needs to prevail, right? Including if it needs to prevail over the law, which Jesus Christ himself did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One's body is their own, and it's not subject to somebody else, right? And their will.
I would talk about God having some authority and ownership of that too, but yes.
Okay. Freedoms for people should be respected, and you should not in any way unjustly encroach upon other people's freedoms.
Sure.
Okay. Belief should conform to one's best scientific and psychological understanding of the world, and one should take care not to distort scientific facts.
Yes.
Okay. And people are fallible. They make mistakes, and you should do your best to rectify those mistakes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, real quick, I just wanted to show you, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Jake, can you pull that up for me, please? Yeah. Can you read the title of that?
7 fundamental tenets. Yes.
The 7 fundamental tenets.
Yeah.
Now, let me scroll down briefly.
I know where this is from.
And can you read that? What does that say?
Yeah, the Satanic Temple.
Of the Satanic Temple. So essentially your doctrine and dogma, right, 100% conforms with the 7 tenets of Satanism by your own admission. Is that correct?
Yes, the Satanic Temple, if anybody knows, is an atheistic movement that does not believe in Satan or God. So it's an interesting thing to try to bring up, to try to align it with Satan, but there's no biblical basis that those are Satan's values, and the movement itself doesn't believe in Satan or God.
Correct. It's a secular organization, right?
Yeah.
And its stated goals are to be a subversive element to Christianity by utilizing Christian ethics against Christians. And they utilize these tenets in order to do that, which are borrowed from Christian ethics, as a way to snub their nose and say, nah, 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 nah. We got you, Christians. And you agree with every single tenet of the satanic doctrine, the secular subversive organization, which is there specifically to destroy Christianity. Is that not correct, sir?
That's not correct, actually. I'm good friends with a Satanist who belongs to the Satanic Temple, and his goal and their goal is not to subvert Christianity, it's to subvert conservative Christianity, Christian nationalism, the kind that I do think that you probably represent. So
Christian nationalism did not even exist at the time of LaVeyan Satanism, wasn't even a thing. And the modern Satanic Temple, which took its lead from LaVeyan Satanism's 10 tenets for the now 7, right, also existed before there was a Christian nationalist movement at all, in order to remove the 10 commandments from any type of public area, in order to remove any type of public prayer from schools, things like this. I suspect these are all things you support.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
How is that not subversive?
It is subversive. I believe Jesus is subversive.
So you're a subversive.
Yes, I agree with what you said there. Of course.
Okay, gotcha. And you agree with all of the tenets of Satanism?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Okay.
So in Brandon's own words, he is a subversive, and his idea of Jesus is a subversive idea, and he is intentionally inverting the teachings of Christianity. He is saying that the good is the bad and the bad is the good. So anyways, I'll leave it there.
Jesus would not consider a fetus to be a fully formed human being. And again, I think many Christians, including Augustine, who says the law does not provide that what is not yet a man should be treated as a man, would agree with me.
But the baby's a man. He's a man in the sense, in the beginning, God created man, both male and female created he them. He's not a man like he doesn't shave, but he's a man in the sense that he's a human. He's a human being.
To use Augustine's language, I will say it's not yet a man. It's a potential man.
He's man. Oh man. He, to say that he's a potential man, it's murky language, because would you call a 5-year-old a potential man, or would you say a 5-year-old is a man?
Well, I don't like let's use the word human. Yes.
Well, now you want to use the word human, but hold on. We're trying to understand what St. Augustine is saying. Would you call a 5-year-old boy a man, or would you call him a potential man?
I think the way that Augustine was using the word man, he would call a 5-year-old boy a man.
But would he call a 1-year-old boy a man?
Yes.
Would he call a baby 2 days before his due date a man in his mother's womb?
Not 2 days before.
No, okay, all right. So where do you find that in Augustine? Where do you find that distinction? It seems to me you're conveniently flipping the meaning of the word man. On the one hand, to refer to a human being, and then on the other hand, to refer to a fully grown type of human being.
Are you seriously suggesting that in Augustine's quote, the law does not provide what is not yet a man should be treated as a man, which is talking about the process of a fetus in a womb. That's what he's talking about. And
No,
he's not
I think one can understand it at a broad level that we shouldn't treat a 5-year-old as a fully grown man for the purposes of, say, moral culpability. So that would be one way in which we shouldn't treat as a man that which is not yet a man. We should not treat, going all the way back, we should not treat a sperm and an egg as a man. They are not men. They're not human beings even. But
you believe something magical happens the moment a sperm meets an egg and it
I think something
becomes
natural
human.
happens. I don't think something magical happens. I think something natural happens when a sperm
Well, I do
meets
think
an
it's
egg.
magical. I think conception is magical in a great way. But
It's wondrous and impressive, yeah. But if you think it's so magical in the sense that it's wondrous and awe-inspiring and impressive, why would you? Why? Why is it? I thought it was just a little meaningless clump of cells that we can just get rid of whenever we wanted. Why is the conception so magical?
you got to stop listening to the far, far, far left. I think most of us are far more reasonable than that. Would never just say it's all just a clump of cells. I think the process itself is a remarkable
far left,
process.
Brandon, respectfully, the far left is much more reasonable on this issue than the position you've staked out, because the far left is wrong. I mean, they'll just pretend that the baby's not a baby, and they'll change the law. But sure, but they'll go so far as to change the law in New York to permit abortion up until the moment of birth. And you're saying no, I wouldn't do that. But your view is totally incoherent to say conception is this magical moment, this magical, wondrous, awe-inspiring
We'll say a
thing
divine,
occurs.
beautiful moment.
It's why is it beautiful? What's so beautiful
Because it's
about
the
it?
potential for life to be formed. But
When a man and a woman go on a date and order a bottle of wine, the potential for life to be formed occurs, okay? And that's magical too, but I think less so than what you're talking about with conception.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brandon is using equivocation here, which is a pretty bad logical fallacy. He's playing fast and loose with what Augustine meant when he said man, and he's cherry-picking this quote and trying to contrive a meaning from it that isn't there. St. Augustine here wasn't making a moral claim. That claim that he was making there was a descriptive claim about Roman law at the time. He's describing how Roman law treats early fetal life. And St. Augustine was definitely against abortion. So if you want to pick quotes from him, then it wouldn't go so well for you. From On the Soul and Its Origin, to deny birth is to refuse the order of nature, to repel the work of God. From expositions on the Psalms, the womb of the mother is defiled by the crime of abortion. So St. Augustine was very pro-life indeed. Anyways, moving on to the last bit now, where Michael Knowles asks a very good question.
When there's murkiness over the question of, is it murder to perform a certain action? As you say, do you think it's better to err on the side of caution or on the side of liberality? That is, if we don't really know at what point it becomes murder to perform an abortion, should we err on the side of doing abortions or not doing abortions?
I agree with you that we should err on the side of caution, which is why those who advocate for abortion and the scientists that work on pregnancies.
But you've pointed out the scientists have no, it's above their pay grade, this question.
Well, I said the church, it's above their pay grade, but I think the point here is that we do have some general consensus that what is happening with an egg and a sperm coming together in a womb is not a human being. It's a potential for life. And so, yes, I think there are some serious ethical questions when we get into late-term abortions, although I don't think those should be criminalized.
You don't even think the late-term abortion should be criminalized? What happened to your reasonable your view now appears to be no different than the far left. It's just they speak with moral certainty and you say it's all ambiguous.
Well, no, I think that if your wife is the one laying in a hospital with a potential for death, that is a really hard moral choice to have to make. And I don't think making that choice should end someone up in prison.
Well, you mentioned St. Thomas Aquinas earlier, and this St. Thomas Aquinas is a good guide on most things. But here, if for instance, if one's wife had a medical problem and the treatment of the medical problem would result in the death of a baby, as does sometimes happen. Ectopic pregnancy is a good example of this. Then through the principle of double effect, one could give the wife the medical treatment, even if the unintended, but even say inevitable secondary effect is the death of the baby. That
so
is
you move the goalpost, so it's not called abortion, but it's still, you're moving forward with a medical treatment that might likely end the life of a baby.
Yeah, a woman has cancer, has chemotherapy, but this is not particularly complex moral thinking. The principle of double effect is like relatively basic stuff here. You are still not, the treatment is not the abortion. The abortion the death of the baby can be a consequence of the treatment. Nobody disagrees with that. No pro-lifer really disagrees with that. A pro-lifer might make a different decision in his or her own life, but no one disagrees with that moral thinking.
Well, I will say that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about late-term abortions. I would consider that abortion, but yeah.
So you think we should criminalize elective late-term abortions?
I think on these questions, I think that's a very strong, morally ambiguous question that.
So you wouldn't even, day before birth, New York's law, the New York Andy Cuomo law, day before birth, it should be illegal.
Yes, thank you for being more precise in exactly what that means. Yes, I think that generally that would be illegal unless it's a situation that I consider abortion, which is making a choice for the mother's health.
A week before birth?
Again, we're going to keep going down the timeline, and I do think that there is a scientific general consensus, and I'm not familiar exactly at this moment with
5 days before birth?
I think all of this is a strong, morally ambiguous.
4 days.
And yes, Michael, I think these things are wrong. Those things
4
are
days?
wrong.
Okay. So, all right. The difference between Pastor Brandon's view and the radical far left's view is the radical far left wants abortion up until the moment of birth to be legal. And you, Brandon, say, well, 4 days before. That's the cutoff.
Okay, so good question there. And I like that approach. If we don't know it's murder, if you're saying that you can't tell when life begins, we don't know if it's murder or not, then wouldn't you err on the side of caution? That is a really good one. And I mean, we already went through this earlier in the video about why life does in fact begin at conception. But unfortunately, this doesn't matter to these people. This is what it will always boil down to. They have no boundaries and everything is permissible. They might sometimes draw some sort of arbitrary line, but then it obviously just gets exposed as just that, as arbitrary, as just their preferences. They always claim to have this nuanced view. I'm not so sure, you know, I have epistemic humility because I'm not claiming to know the truth. But this is just another fallacy where you're claiming that just because you have a nuanced claim, that means your claim is better. That's just incorrect. Sometimes a nuanced understanding of things is correct, but there are many things that we can actually just observe the truth about. So anyways, guys, enough from me today. If you don't mind smashing that like button, that would be greatly appreciated. Subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.